Hello everyone, my name is Fatih, and the main topic of this presentation is how can biological factors influence the development of a person's gender identity, and hormones have been chosen as the main focus in this presentation and this report. First article reviewed in this presentation is called Hormonal Treatment Reduces Psychobiological Distress and Gender Identity Disorder independently of the attachment style, and gender identity disorder itself can be a very stressful condition. It's caused when a person's gender identity doesn't match his or her gender at birth. So it can be very stressful, and researchers who have conducted this study attempted to investigate how hormonal therapy, whether it helps or doesn't help to reduce stress, to improve condition among those who are suffering from this very stressful condition. And the role of attachment style was also studied, and researchers tried to correlate it. So the main hypothesis in this study was that hormonal therapy should have positive effect, and that's why it's supposed to reduce cortisol level, which is one of the main stress hormones produced by body, especially in the long-term stress. And so overall stress, they expected to be reduced after patients received hormonal treatment. And as participants, there were 70 transsexual individuals chosen. 64 of them were male to female, while 26% were female to male type. So all of the participants were recruited at University of Bari, which is located in Italy. So in order to see whether it has positive effect on a psychobiological condition among patients, cortisol level was measured by taking blood samples, and then participants submitted their self-report, consists of 10-item perceived stress scale test, and then attachment style, which is important measurement of social connectiveness and relationships in adults. It was examined by conducting interviews with one of the authors of this paper, who himself is a professional psychotherapist. Results show that among those who received hormonal therapy, there was considerably lower level of cortisol, and they experienced less stress after therapy. And at the end of the study, researchers didn't find any correlation between attachment style and treatment, so it wasn't observed. And as a conclusion, I may say that hormonal therapy really reduces stress in those patients, who suffer from gender identity disorder. So, and it's also important to mention that its effect doesn't correlate. It doesn't correlate with the individual's attachment style, which is another important finding. Its main limitation, I need to say that blood I was taken only in the morning, which sort of limited findings. It can be considered as limitation. Effects of gender identity of prenatal androgens and genital appearance, evidence from girls with congenital adrenal hyperplasia. This is another study reviewed in this presentation. Congenital adrenal hyperplasia is condition caused by excessive androgen while baby is still in uterus. It seriously affects females because androgen is male type hormone that is responsible for male secondary sexual characteristics. So background of this study was that researchers tried to identify how gender identity is affected in girls who have this condition. So they aim to figure out what role plays prenatal exposure to androgens and how it affects gender identity in girls. So as participants, there were 79 females. All were aged from 3 to 18, and 43 of them had this condition, and 29 were unaffected, and there were 7 girls who identified themselves as tomboys. In order to examine gender identity among those who are affected with congenital adrenal hyperplasia, researchers prepared 9-item interview, and the results that they got showed that girls with a congenital adrenal hyperplasia have considerably higher scores on a scale compared to unaffected girls. And I want to mention that the higher scores they have, the more male type they can be considered, but they have less than tomboys, but not really, just a bit less, but considerably more than unaffected girls. Also, researchers didn't find any correlation between gender identity and age of participants. And as conclusion, I may say that gender identity can be considered as sole and main. However, its main it can be solely used to make sex assignment, and then it cannot be considered as sole factor that influence gender identity, even though it's very important. And as a limitation, I can say that as I found, not all medical data was available for all of the participants, so study was sort of limited. That's why. And tomboys that were also involved in this study, they were represented inadequately, as researchers stated themselves. Also, it was mentioned in the paper that sample size cannot be considered as very representative. Last but not least, study that is reviewed in this presentation is called Androgen and Psychosexual Development, Core Gender Identity, Sexual Orientation, and Recall Childhood Gender Role Behavior in Women and Men with Congenital Adrenal Hyperplasia. So the background of this study is that researchers try to investigate how people, both males and females with congenital adrenal hyperplasia, how prenatal androgen exposure eventually influenced psychosexual development in those individuals. It's important to mention that compared to the previous article, in this article, researchers also included males into the research. All of the participants that were involved in this research, they were all 18 years all above 18 years old, and there were like 25 participants with such conditions. 16 of them were women, while 9 were men, and 25 were used as control. They were unaffected. There were 15 women and 10 men involved. In order to examine the role which androgen hormones play on gender identity in males and females, researchers prepared an item interview, and after they conducted the study, they concluded that affected women, they tend to be less satisfied with being females, and they showed that there was a portion of female who said that they had thoughts about changing sex, while in a group of unaffected women there were no such responses recorded. Furthermore, none of the males, regardless of their condition, said that they ever wanted to change sex. And there were some limitations with the study as well. This study wasn't longitudinal, so it had negative effect on the reliability of this paper, and they had to use retrospective reports. And when they tried to access the knowledge whether how males are affected by congenital adrenal hyperplasia, so they couldn't find any researchers because none were done before, and sample size in this case was also too small, which means not really representative.